John 7:15. Et mirabantur Iudai dicentes quomodoic litteras scit cum non didiceret. And the Jews marveled, saying, how is it that this man knows his letters, though he has not learned or studied? Here we see the Jewish leaders reacting with astonishment to the teaching of Jesus at the festival, as we've been discussing for the last few verses. And we want to notice right away the imperfect tense here, bantur, which we have seen a number of times in the last few verses. The Iudai, the Jewish leaders, were in the process of marveling or expressing astonishment. And it is in that context that they were saying, and then we get a direct quotation here indicating their actual words. So these Iudai were saying, and here is our present active participle from dico, dicere, to speak or talk. Quomodo, how is it that this man, and here we're supposed to understand Jesus, how is it that this man knows his letters? Now, litteras scit has to be an idiom. It is, in fact, an idiom for education more generally. Knowing one's letters stands in as a kind of metaphor for being an educated person more generally. Knowing letters and literature, and in this case, particularly the sacred literature, the Holy Scriptures of the Jewish people, and how to comment upon them responsibly and with illumination and insight. The Jewish leaders can't understand how Jesus could have acquired these things, and we get a cum clause here that is crucial to our construction of meaning in this verse. So this is cum, meaning although, and then we're going to expect a subjunctive, which of course is what we get here. And we're going to get a subjunctive because of that cum with that concessive meaning, or that meaning indicating something in spite of which something else is true or happens. In general, such clauses take the subjunctive mood in Latin. How do we know which tense of the subjunctive to use? Well, we've got to look at our main clause verb, but that's not going to be mirabantur, because here it's dicentes, actually, which is controlling what follows. It's setting up this entire quotation grammatically. And dicentes is a present tense participle, as we said, which means, according to the rule of the sequence of tenses, the consecutio temporum, which we've talked about in other videos, I would urge you to look that up for review if it's a bit fuzzy in your memory. We won't go over it entirely here, but it is worth reviewing because it's so important as a structuring principle for relating subordinate and main clauses in Latin sentences, particularly complex Latin sentences. So because we have a present tense verb, well, not really a verb, but a participle here, whose verbal sense is in the present tense, we could say, we've got to have a similarly primary sequence verb in our subordinate clause. Present tense is what we call a primary tense. There are primary and secondary, or primary and historical tenses, but what we've got here is a primary tense. So if we want to indicate that the action of the subordinate clause is occurring in this sentence prior to the action of the main clause, we've got to use the appropriate tense from the primary tense list, and that's going to be the perfect. So we actually get a perfect subjunctive here, dediceret, and this is from disco, discere, discitum, a third conjugation verb that means to learn. In this case, we might translate it in this context as something like study, and that is in fact what many English translations do. They say, how is it that this man knows his letters? How is it that he's educated, though he has not studied? But literally it says, though he has not learned. The idea is he has not learned under the tutelage of of any teacher or rabbi whom we know. So where does he get this authoritative, insightful teaching?